Hello, all you wonderful subscribers and followers and listeners of this channel of Peak Prosperity. I am Chris Martenson. We are now concluding with part 3 of a 3-part series that pulls together the most important story I know how to tell. It's fundamentally the story of the Crash Course contained within the Crash Course book. If you want the full story, hey, get the book. Then you'll have more context and margins that you can scratch notes in. So let's go into part 3 right now. Remember, if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe. That helps this channel out, of course. So with that, let's dive in. I'll see you on the back end. And if we look now at the third component of this, the environment, this is where my heart really lies. When I was a kid, we would take these trips to upstate New York, and the windshield always ended up looking like this, like in between gas stations, right? And my job as an 8-year-old boy was to climb on the hood of this car and scrape the windshield clean again. It was tricky because there were insects all over it. Today, I can do that trip forward and back and not have a single bug on the windshield anymore. And this is a global phenomenon, and people notice this all over the world. And this first came to on our alert because some people, hobbyists in Germany, were tracking how many bugs there were. And they'd been doing this dutifully for years in sort of their German precision way, going out to parks and setting traps and collecting and measuring and weighing insects. And they started noticing a severe decline starting in the late 90s, and now it's global. So we know it's something environmental. The rusty patch bumblebee, 87% gone. I can stand under, I have fruit trees here. I can stand under them in spring, and if I don't have my own honey bees going, I don't hear bees anymore. It's pretty frightening, no question about it. Everybody's been talking about this insect apocalypse, like, oh, what could it be? Nobody has any ideas, but I do. There was a new class of pesticides that came out in the mid-90s called neonicotinoids. They're awful. They're not really insecticides. They're biocides. They're so poisonous that you coat a kernel of corn with this stuff and you plant the corn seed and it grows into a full plant. The tissues of that plant are so toxic that any corn borer or other pest eating the plants of that mature tissues of that mature plant die. The amount on that seed, if a starling ate that or a sparrow ate that, the bird will die. And this stuff has a 1,000-day half-life. Call it 3 years. That means that if a farmer puts it on in year 1 and then puts it on in year 2 and puts it on in year 3, it is bioaccumulating, principally in water, in waterways. So we don't see mayflies anymore. We don't see caddisflies. These are water-based insects. This is astonishing. And the whole world's kind of going, well, what are you going to do? The insects are disappearing. Like it's like we're Romans and we see a comet. We have no clue for what's happening. It's like just this weird thing. But my core degree in pathology, I came up through a biological and environmental sciences background. One does not wipe out the bottom of a 500 million year old food chain without consequences. That's what we're doing. And what we lack right now is the ability to say, maybe this stuff we started doing in the late 90s, maybe we shouldn't do any more of that. That would be a good idea. But we lack the capacity somehow to organize ourselves at this scale of 8 billion people to say, Syngenta or Bayer making $1 billion or $2 billion a year off of their neonicotinoids. Maybe we could lose that. Maybe they could not make the money so we could get our insects back. That would be awesome. Well, they're running the experiment in Europe. We'll see how that goes. Phytoplankton, the core, the bottom of the food pyramid in the ocean, down 50% over the past few decades. Holy moly, what? It turns out there's a thiamine. Vitamin B6 is like missing in the entire food chain across all the oceans. So something humans are doing has caused thiamine to disappear, which has huge impacts on fish and bird survivability, et cetera. It's just a puzzling lack of thiamine. They're like, and again, people are like, well, I don't know. Well, when did it start disappearing? What have we been doing new that maybe we should stop doing that, right? Well, apparently we can't even rally to the cause when it's ourselves, right? So human sperm counts have been declining worldwide. They're down by over 50% in the last 50 years. If you plot it out, eventually humans are no longer reproducing. You would think that would cause some alarm, some serious inquiry. Maybe we could spend 1 billion less bailing out one of these big banks and spend that money instead figuring this story out. But still, there's a puzzling lack of concern or appropriate focus on this. And of course, when you wipe out the bottom of the food pyramid, sometimes your apex predators and sentinel species is where you detect it. So when they say North Atlantic right whales are not recording births, typical reason for an animal not to record to have a birth is because it's stressed. The most prime stress there is not being fed well. And so it turns out humans are busy now already at one current unit of economic amount, one unit of economy here in 2023. We're already harvesting Antarctic krill, which is the next layer up from the bottom of the food pyramid. But this krill then feeds the fish and feeds the whales, which feeds the birds, which feeds the penguins, etc. So we're already harvesting at the bottom of the food pyramid. Why? Because that's what's left in this story. And the world wants to double its economy one more time, and then one more time after that. What are we harvesting after we're harvesting krill? Like sooner or later, somebody has to stand up and go, hold it. This story doesn't make sense, right? And that's my role in life, I guess. So that's why I'm here and why I'm counting on y'all to really take a hard look at this and help get our story right. Because right now our eco dashboard is just like every light on our panel is just lit up at this point in time. The stresses we're seeing around water, fresh water, soil degradation into dirt, the oceanic dead zones from all the pollution runoff from our agricultural practices, you name it, on and on and on. It's pretty alarming. And yet the only plan we have is to grow our economy and make it double again. And then after that, one more time, I guess, until something breaks. But that's not a very intelligent way to go forward. So as economist Herbert Stein said, if something cannot go on forever, it'll stop. That's where I think we are in the story, that if you feel that change, that really big change, you can just feel it in your bones. Something is not quite right. It's because of this stuff I've just been telling you about. We are an organism that was highly tuned to our biological sphere. We evolved up into it. And I believe we have the intuitive body receptive capacity to understand when it's time to move out of this valley we've used up into the next lush valley, and we'd have nowhere to go now. That's sort of my interpretation of some of the alarm and displacement activities we're seeing around this. But without energy, it doesn't matter. We can't grow our economy because, as you saw, the economy and energy are tightly linked. If the energy isn't there, in particular surplus energy isn't there, this won't happen. If that doesn't happen, I'm pretty sure we get financial and economic instability first, because we have a system that is dedicated, predicated, and addicted to growth. If it doesn't grow, it gets very unhappy very, very quickly. So that's kind of where we're at in the story with that. The way I look at this at the end, we have just a few options. Option one, we get to live within our limits. And we should have a full-throated conversation about that. We ought to just argue about it, have great opinion-based, fact-based conversations, say, here's where I think you're right, here's where you're wrong, here's what we want to do. But we should learn to live within whatever those limits are. And if we do that, I think we got a shot at this. But first we have to agree that we've got, something that we really need to do, which is that limits actually exist. Our cultural narrative still says that limits don't really exist. We just have to understand this is a sphere. Has a finite volume, finite surface area, finite amount of everything. Just like our stadium, it has only so much space, as it were, to grow into. And of course, without a healthy earth, there is no wealth whatsoever. You learn this as a rich person. You're rich until you lose your health. And then, of course, your wealth doesn't matter at all. So we need a healthy planet, obviously, but unfortunately, that needs to be reinforced all the time. And option two is we just keep going until Earth resembles Mars, or we just run out of stuff. We just smash into some sort of a limit wall. Those are our options. We either get the story right, or we pretend as if that story doesn't have a date that's difficult until sometime in the future. But when we get there to that future, we're going to find that we don't have the vigor. We don't have the resources left to do anything in the future that we would want to. So that's the story I have to tell. It's really about economy, energy, environment, that the energy is the core of this story. We're just not being super rational about it as a species. And we need to very much get that story online. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening to all that. And that's all I have to say about that. All right. With that, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Remember, hit like, hit subscribe if you like this. Come on by peakprosperity.com, become a member if you want to join the #1 online resilience community. Because guess what? We're going to have to join together if we're going to get through this in any sort of style. And, well, I plan to. So would love to see you there. As always, can't wait to read your comments down below. See you next time. Bye-bye.
The beauty of saying it's an emergency is very difficult to challenge any of this stuff.
Our wealth is being stolen via our money.
I would have never come here if I thought it was lost. I know we can.